Welcome back to the channel, folks. Now, today is all about going long. We are at what I would call your typical commercial fishery. This is Holly Farm. There's a great stock of F1s, a great stock of carp, and we're faced with a typical commercial fishery pet. We've got an island that's probably 20 metres away from our fishing position, and we've had a brilliant day, an absolutely fantastic session. We've had a morning session this morning where we've had fish after fish on a method feeder, and because we're catching F1s, which can be a little bit finicky, I know we've caught some carp as well, but the mainstay of the fish we're catching are beautiful F1s like this fella. Let's just hold him up for you. They're not always plain sailing when it comes to method feeder work. So while I was fishing the method feeder, I was catapulting some pellets over the far side, and the peg just become alive with fish. It was absolutely ridiculous how many fish were there, and I was getting liners. The feeder was moving all the time, and I just knew that if I could get a flow presentation over there, I just felt that I'd catch more fish. So out came the pole, and we've set up a flick rig. Now, what is a flick rig? Firstly, down this end, pretty standard. I'll talk about that in a second, but if you look, we've got probably 9 or 10 feet of line above the float. Now, we always talk about keeping a nice short line above the float for presentation. You can hold your float nice and still, hit all your bites, you know, that's great. But first things first, we need to get to where the fish are. And by using that long line, I can use my full length of pole and flick the rig to as close to those fish as possible. We've got yellow reactor core elastic, and because we've got such a long length of line, this line is 0.12 diameter, which means slightly lighter than I would normally use for my commercial fishery work, but it's just not catching the wind as much because it's such a long length of line. Now, float wise, you need a bit of weight down there. You need, obviously, to be able to flick the rig over there. That's a 4x12s. That's an MW 4x12s, a midi float, bulletproof, fiberglass stem, nice visible bristle. The eye's tied in as well, which helps with strength. Just a bulletproof float I use a lot of the time. Shotting needs to be really simple. So I've got a bulk of number 8 slot shot there. Ideally no tangles. And then we've got our hook length, which is 4 inches of 0.12 again. We've got a size 16 with a bait band on the hair. Pretty simple stuff. Now, feed wise, because we're aiming to, well, initially when we were fishing a method feeder, aiming to attract fish in the swim, but now we're trying to catch shallow, we need to feed quite regularly. I've got these pellets with me. These are the Catter pellets from Dynamite Baits. Really dense, heavy pellets that fire out really accurately. You can catapult these pellets a little bit further than some other pellets. These are 6mm pellets, and I can catapult these, the distance no problem today. They make a lovely plop on the water surface. So I've been firing these in as often as I can, and I'm sort of trying to land them as tight as I can as well now, because I'm trying to grab these fish's attention and pull them into a really tight area. So hook bait wise, there's been 2 really good hook baits today. Firstly, one of these 6mm just slipped in that band, hook and feed in one bag. But because we have been catching some F1s, I've been putting a 4mm on, and I think it's been better because, don't get me wrong, we've got a long length of line, we're fishing for F1s. You know what that means? It means we're going to miss a few bites. But I think with a 4mm, you just end up hitting a few more bites. So 4mm in that band, more hook showing, smaller bait. F1s love a small bait, we all know that. And I think that has been slightly better than a 6mm. But like I say, we're still going to miss a few bites. The benefit of what we're doing now, and you're going to look at this and think, Rob, that looks ridiculously, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Shows how much they want the pellets. I'll just drop that in short. We'll net this fish, then I'll carry on. The benefit of fishing where we're fishing, I mean, we ought to just fish at 4 metres out by the looks of this, but the benefit of fishing where we're fishing is the fact that that's where the fish are. The majority of fish, they're over there. They're away from angling pressure, especially in a match. They're going to push over towards that island and move away from any anglers. The trouble is when you fish over there with a float presentation normally, it usually means fishing a waggler, which means every time you miss a bite, you've got to recast in. Every time you want to make a little plop on the surface, you've got to recast in. It's hard work. You know, we've all had them days on pellet wagglers where you think your arm's going to drop off at the end of it. Whereas what I'm going to do now might look hard work, but actually, and hopefully, you're not out there for that long. You're just shipping out, slap it a few times, or flick it into the water a few times, and you've got a fish on the end. So before the rain gets too strong, we'll try and show you what I mean. So it's a long old way. This is 16 metres, which is quite often the rules on a lot of venues. 16 metres is the limit of pole on a lot of venues. And what we've got to do is lift that whole length of line and the whole rig out of the water, and we've got to get it swinging so we can flick it as close to that island as possible. You've got to create sort of like a pendulum effect with the rig. So see if we can flick it in. There we go. And we're trying to make a bit of a splash on the water, trying to keep the rig as tight as possible. Because like I say, if we're not careful, we're going to miss a few bites. We're going to foul up a few fish maybe as they take it just outside the mouth, and if we're not careful, we're not going to get right. So we've got to keep a tight line. Now, any sort of wind on the water, and it makes it very difficult. There we go. And that's why we've got, I mean, at the minute there's no wind, so we can use those 4mm pellets as hook bait. If it was a little bit windier, we'd probably go with 6mm pellets, because they're nice and heavy and they just straighten the rig out a little bit. You've just got to be a bit cautious when we're netting the fish, because we've got a lot of line out. I mean, ideally, I'd say the length of line we're using now, that 9-10 foot, is about the limit that you'd want to go to. But you can see there, obviously it looks hard work, swinging that pole around, you know, can be a bit of a back-breaking session, but ideally you're only out there for whatever, what was that, 10-15 seconds, drop it in a couple of times, make a couple of splashes, and all of a sudden you've got, I mean, the hook just fell out there, which shows that if we'd have hooked that on rod and line, we probably wouldn't even have netted it, but with that soft elastic we've got a chance. But when you're targeting sort of F1s, 2-pound F1s, which say the mainstay of a lot of commercial fisheries, a float approach is the way to go. And sometimes going long, that's the way to go. I'm going to carry on fishing. I know it's raining, I love my fishing, I'm going to carry on fishing. Hopefully we've shown you something that you might think about next time you go out on your local commercial. Until next time, tight lines.